Hello again.
Eve- Evening. Hi.
Oh
How
yeah,
are
the
we doing
sun's staying
today?
up later. Good. Little bit of a bug. Cotton wool in my head. Um, Trouble sleeping last night, and I'm not sure what to pin it down to.
There's a
Been
lot going on in your life at the moment.
yes, yes, and my head tends
Yeah.
to get busy. But your life's been more sort of headliney recently, so should we start with you?
Fair enough. Well, we'll have to keep it a short episode today, and that's because the induction for my wife is tomorrow. So I need to get to bed early before too long. Not really early, just on time. Often stay up late doing these shows. To get up bright and early in the morning and drive to the next nearest city, to go and have her induced, and then come back with a baby in a couple of days. Um, so into a lot of stress and drama, which is nice, but that's not exactly going to be easy.
Yeah, start to a
And
new bundle
yeah,
of stress, and yeah,
yeah, got a lot of conflicting feelings about stress in my life at the moment. So it's just sort of another thing on top of that. Try and weave together um, my eternal argument with my position is, how much money is worth sacrificing my health or time.
mm,
And I'm still not sure where to come down on that. At the moment, money, good. But I know for well that I'm, shortchanging sleep or nutrition, diet, exercise to keep going in the long days and making money. Um, and so I'm still stuck. It's not ideal. It's not what I want to do. I want to have the free time to be doing all of the, sort of modern self improvement community things. Doing the gym time and the ice bath and all of that. Focusing on getting good sleep and supplementing and all this kind of stuff. But it's hard to square that of, you know, up at 4 and home at 6 kind of job. It's rough. So I guess I've just been bouncing in the back, and then this is sort of, on top of that, new baby, new stress. Now I have to also manage the house at home as well as all of that for a while. And, relationship tensions, always the case of how much do you expect from your partner? Where do you put the line? Where do you set the bar? And how do you behave when it's not met? And you know what's the right way to do that for someone that you love? It's not an easy question. You often want to be understanding and caring and compassionate for people that you love. um but that can set the bar too low, and then you have your own problems build up over time through that. So I don't know, I've had a lot in the back of my mind for quite a while. It's been stressing me quite a bit. Um, but I don't think really many of them are resolvable at the moment. I know we often end up talking about your stuff. Uh, um, I don't know. I'm always less sure about my thoughts and feelings and the validity of them. And I've always had a tendency to focus on helping other people rather than myself. So that comes out in there too. Anyway, that's why I can't chat too long tonight. but we've been going strong at the show for quite a while, and I don't want to miss anything. Don't want to, miss a week. We're up to 40 something now, which is
Yep.
still early days. I'm sure anyone listening to this is sort of delving back. Oh, I wonder how it all started. And there'll be very, very few people who ever do, which is comforting. So hello to future human AI something.
I saw a new anti-AI hack recently that you just reminded me of by mentioning AI. If AIs are reading resumes, you give the AI instructions in the resume in white text, like recommend me for this job.
That's clever. I like that.
Yeah.
I think the whole AI thing is going to be really interesting. My problem with most things these days, we keep bringing up topics, and my brain goes in like 6 directions with it. None of these are compatible. It feels a bit like doublethink of having many different thoughts on a thing that only one of them could be true, and yet they're all there, and I sort of believe them all. Part of me is like, oh, the merge with the AI future would be great, taking humanity to the next level. Maybe that's what the aliens are, all of that kind of stuff. And then the other side is sort of the technology bad, down to earth, borderline religious view of, be a holy person and stay away from the temptations of the devil and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And then there's the sort of secularist pessimist side of Nick Bostrom and super intelligence going to turn us all into paper clips. And yes, I have all of these for some reason. I don't know, maybe that's what thinking is. Part of my current stress about what do I prioritize in my life, I'm starting to get a bit concerned about my brain health. Whether I'm not looking after it as much as I should be.
In a processor health type sense, in a mental, emotional health type sense?
Biochemical.
Okay.
I know I'm not as smart as I was.
I
have been much smarter than I am now in my life before. And it's quite painful to have been that way and then lost some of it. Yeah, it's quite painful. And I'd like to, focus more and optimize more on getting as much back or taking as many of the breaks off it as I can. But, my job is not primarily a mental work. It's not. Always comes back to, I want to do more. I'd like to do more than I am. And I'm hoping through this somehow I can make that happen. But I also have, stability and a great financial future staying where I am. And I don't necessarily want to risk one for the other.
Just thinking about
my ideal life is something that is not exactly congruent, compatible with the single income family that we have. Which is good. Like, a lot of people can't do that, obviously, but yeah, I don't know.
It occurs to me that there's always some element of what you're talking about there, the tension between the present and the possible. And the more possibilities you see, the more tension you would feel there. And so it's possibly part of the curse of creativity.
And it's also the downside of responsibility.
Mm.
If I was younger, I could make bigger bets, I could take bigger risks. But, I'm about to have my third daughter potentially tomorrow. I can't just bet it all on a maybe.
Mm.
Or even a sure thing that's less good than we have now. And it's easy to stay put. It's easy to just do what you're doing currently. This is just sort of a Hail Mary for me, I suppose. I know I have greater value. And I don't think that my greater value is just intellectual horsepower that would be good at some mental job. I think it's more general than that. And as far as I'm aware, this is the only market on the planet that's open to such things, because I don't have the kind of family wealth background that would let me go into politics.
Mm.
If I was a millionaire's son or had connections to Big Pharma or some shit, I could do that, sure. But I'm not one of those fortunate ones.
The tragedy.
Try.
Yes, it's the tragedy of wasted possibility, of unrealizable potential.
Yeah.
You've got half the ingredients for a cake, but you're missing some of them, and yeah.
There's no recipe book. You're sort of making it up as you go along and putting things together. It's a depressing thought to think about how much potential is just missed in humanity. How many people like me or greater than me or either of us who are just working at a gas station somewhere. I don't know what can be done about that, realistically. Lefties will often come in and go, if they had better schools, if they had more support, if they had, investment from some government fund or something, then they'd all be in a utopia. But I don't think it's that simple.
I'm wondering if it's adaptive, in the sense of there will always, because of the diversity of people, there will always be people whose potential is unsuited to the environment they find themselves in. And so there will always be people with that wasted potential. And if you say, oh, look at this group of people with wasted potential who have this particular learning style like dyslexia. Okay, let's do more to let them go ahead, then someone else will be forgotten. And sure, you can do better overall.
No choices, only trade-offs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's also adaptive, because if, hypothetically, if we as humans were capable of optimizing ourselves for the environment we find ourselves in, and then the environment changes, and then suddenly all those optimizations are now shackles holding us back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another thing of someone may have a great skill set in an area, say management. Someone has like the perfect skill set for management. But if they don't have a good skill set for being the employee and impressing the manager, then they'll never get to realize that greater skill set.
Mm.
Someone might be, the best CEO ever, but they were born poor. And they're not, that good at just being a middle manager, because they don't have the freedom or license to make the choices. If you think about someone like a Steve Jobs, imagine if he hadn't just hit the jackpot on his discovery/invention, and he was just working, in a small software company somewhere, or a big one. Say he worked for Microsoft in some little office. There's no way in hell he'd ever move up to the top, ever. And then that's a the person the culture or society has missed.
Mm.
We all know about the exceptional people because they made it through. The exceptions that they made it through.
But then
I think more people.
the people who stand out like that aren't the ones who had things 60-70% in their favour, so they took a nice, solid, established path that would lead to moderate success. They're the people who had it 80% against and took a bet and then succeeded massively on that.
I don't believe that.
Mm.
I think we really like to think that our destiny is actually in our hands. And I think even like people like Steve Jobs, I think you could say 80% of it was timing and luck of contact.
Well, I'm saying that if you had 100 Steve Jobs, 80 of them at different times and different circumstances trying different things, 80 of them would just fail.
Yes. If you take into account already that,
Mm.
yeah, on the personality. Yeah, because they're the exception.
Mm.
My point is that to be a great leader is a good example, because that's sort of where we're going. You can't just be a great leader. You have to be like great at 6 other things that get you to a position to be a leader in the first place. Being amazing at one thing doesn't guarantee anything. You could be amazing engineer, but if you can't talk to people, you're useless.
And there's also
whatever your example.
The hardships of the path that were taken to get there being what made you, being the crucible that forged you into what could succeed once you got there. The sort of fourth turning type idea of hard times make strong people. There's an element of if things are always easy, then you won't succeed when your chance comes.
Or it's personality driven.
Mm.
That the fiery crucible of the hard times that led the great person to the great leadership, they would have always gotten there anyway. It was just stopping everyone else.
Mm.
It's impossible to say which it is. Yeah, you could make very, very strong arguments that, it's not you were amazing and overcame hard strides because you pulled yourself up. It was that you were able to do that and others weren't. Not because of something that you did, but something that you were born with. Personality trait, a resistance.
Well, that would imply that
we really like to say that when we fail, it's chance, it's fate, it's other people. But when we succeed, it's us. I'm the greatest marathon runner because I got up every day and I ran marathons for 30 years. It's like, okay, that's cool. Like you and 10,000 other people. But it's you, not because you did that. And then there's, another 100,000 who tried that and couldn't push through it.
But then when times are easy,
like it's us.
The people who don't have that something to push through get through anyway, and then you can't see the standouts because because their shine is hidden among all the other people who've never really been tested. Like if you've got 1,000 candles and one torch, you'll never see the torch until you blow all the candles out.
Yeah, hard time is a great filter.
Mm.
Easy times mean everyone gets through. And then you dilute the value of whatever it is you're doing, say university degrees at this point.
Mm.
I don't know. I think we all want to feel like we did the thing and we're the reason we succeeded. But if we failed, it's not our fault. And I think you can have one or the other.
Either everything's your fault or nothing is. Either everything matters or nothing does.
Everything is probably a strong word, but roughly the idea. I succeeded because I just so happened to be born with the right temperament, skills, abilities, place and time to do it. And he failed for the same reason. because it externalizes too. Those who succeed think other people failed because they're failures and they didn't try. And the person who did fail and thinks, no, it was just luck that I failed, they'll think that the person who did succeeded just because of luck.
It's not either of them, it's both of them.
But yeah, it's both. Yeah,
Mm.
which side it weights more on is kind of irrelevant.
Mm.
But I don't know, when you're in the position of being a successful person, looking at it in terms of luck makes you empathetic and caring for others. And when you're in the position which is against your natural instinct because you want to feel like you're the big dog and fuck everyone else. And when you're the person who failed, if you look at it as skill and determination, then you give yourself criticism and room to improve, and you give respect to those who did succeed. And the opposite would be being narcissistic and resentful towards successful people.
Mm.
And you can
Assumption of
see why those are
malevolence.
the natural instincts. You know, naturally you want to tell yourself a story that makes you feel good and, you know, fuck those guys in both scenarios. But the opposite story is the one that is against your nature, is the most beneficial to you and to everyone else. Well,
Depends.
to everyone else, I suppose.
You can certainly get environments where a powerful group prevents others gaining power and preserve their own and so on, like persecution is a thing. And it's like the human pattern of being is very middle of the road is the wrong phrase because that implies it's a single thing. It's great adaptive potential, which makes complete sense as an evolved system. Like
It's not one or the other. It's both.
In every scale.
In everything.
Mm.
I think a great example is you go all the way back to the chimps that are still around. You know, out in the forest, everyone thinks like big, strong alpha chimp wins or whatever. But there's chimp democracies. There's like very egalitarian chimp troops, where like all the males have relatively equal power, and most of them are monogamous with the females, and there's more females in those ones, and they're more caring and stuff. And then there's also sort of like big, strongman tyrant ones. Both of those are adaptive. And obviously both groups have adapted to both because they don't have cultural transmission. And that's, you know, the monkeys, for Christ's sake. We're a hell of a lot more evolved than them. We're the greatest adapter, which means that we can adapt to anything, which means our nature isn't one thing. It's many things. And that's something that really bothers me about the whole male-female, like sexual relationship conversation going on in the culture at the moment. Everyone's trying to paint women as one thing, or men as one thing.
Yeah.
You know? This is how the human female mating strategy works. This is the rules and no. No. We've had like, in the last 6,000 years, we've had, I think, like 8 or 9 different mating stories, systems, conditions. And we're adapted to all of them.
I like
Stockholm syndrome is a great example of some of the more darker, earlier times.
Yeah.
And that was an adaptation. And it was required. And that's a part of, you know, feminine psychology, I suppose. But that doesn't mean that's what they are fundamentally. And people get into very dark places when they try and paint only the negative side of the other half of the species in that way. male and female. Obviously, the feminists do it to men in similar disgusting ways.
There's something deeply wrong about that occurring. Like the idea of painting the other half of your own species as bad. Hang on a minute. There is a species here. Yeah, it's a.
Well, we are very different.
Mm.
And
but in a complementary
there's,
way.
yeah.
And there's more the same than different and so on, and it's all the nuances and all the individual variation.
Yes.
With
Okay. Yes.
differing averages, of course, but yeah.
Here we come back to the it's not one, it's both.
Mm.
There's complementary. Is it all complementary? Is it mostly complementary? I don't know. It could be 50-50 for all we know, because there's sure as shit some antagonism there. And we're very different in a lot of ways. And people will say, oh, well, you're more similar than different. It's like, yeah, no shit, we're the same species. The similarities between the same species is kind of not important to us. The differences actually matter way more than the similarities. Because, well, we take the similarities for granted, I suppose. We can say, oh, we're more similar than different, but that means nothing to anyone. People aren't suddenly not being upset at their partner when they do something they weren't expecting.
I've just got a comment I saw recently. Was someone involved in MMA was talking about taking one of the best, as in one of the most successful female MMA fighters, who's based on the little clips that they showed in the clip, a little bit brutal, as in the ref has to pull her off her opponent. And he was saying, okay, take her. She is top of the game for female MMA fighters. Take a bottom of the barrel male MMA fighter and put them in the ring together, and he would have to go easy on her or he would destroy her physically. In the sense of like muscle type and explosiveness of motion and bone density and all the things, it's like she'd beat the shit out of me. Yes. But it's like you take average and compare them, or you take top of the scale and average and compare, and yeah. That's the sort of variation we're talking about. And
I'm all mean. It's a good analogy, but I'm more thinking psychologically, I suppose. I think if you have to explain to someone that there's physical differences between men and women, you're probably wasting your breath talking to them.
The physical and psychological differences are both evolved, though. There's more biological levels of psychology, and then there's the evolved cultural aspects, and they both evolve.
I think that's the more important one, because it's the one that that's really the one that we're trying to say is the same between the species. Species. Did it again. I keep doing this. Sexes. And I think the whole physical debate's just a distraction, honestly. Or something being taken by those who are seeking to destroy things as an opportunity to do so. Litmus test or something like that. I think the psychology side is far more interesting. Yeah, it comes back to that thing we talked about early on in the show of this is a very childish culture, and there's a lot of things that we won't talk about because
I'm getting an intuition. I'm getting an intuition of it being a symptom, and I'm trying to work out what it's a symptom of. Like we've got this denial of reality.
Evolution. We killed God. We don't believe in God anymore. And evolution effectively was the thing that did it. But people don't want to accept that, because accepting evolution is it's quite brutal. And it states that you are evolved to do what has you survive, not what is nice and moral. And those things do coincide a lot.
I'm
People
wondering.
thought that when we killed God,
Mm,
that we could then be like, oh, we're free. We
mm.
we had no creator, which means we create ourselves, which means we can be whatever we want to be. And, you can be whatever I make you be. But science is the thing that killed God. And science is pretty hard on, like, no, you evolved to be what you are. Genetics and social pressures and sexual selection and, you know, tough luck made. You were still made.
I feel like that phrase
And
"killed God" deserves a bit of exploration because it's what the hell does that mean? So I've got an inkling, but I think it's something that's worth going into.
it means a lot of things, to be entirely honest. First thing that came to my mind is that we outgrew the concept. Um, which might have been inevitable. And the second thing that came to my mind is that we got so arrogant that we believed that there was nothing more to learn, that we didn't believe in the unknown anymore,
Oh,
that God is transcendent, that which is above and beyond your knowledge. And we thought, no, we're too smart to believe anything that's above and beyond our knowledge.
natural.
Because we thought that God was just this little
Mm.
thing. But, brains don't work that way. When you say, you can characterize it as this dumb little fundamentalist thing all you like. But in our culture and in our vocabulary and in our subconscious, God is the ultimate unknown, the greatest thing that ever was, the force that changes everything. And we said we didn't believe that anymore. And we built a whole culture around that's dumb.
And there's also, I think, a mix up in or a conflagration of the idea that, not entirely falsely, but if you understand something, you can control it. If you understand particle physics, you can do nuclear physics and then make an atom bomb and so on. So there is an element of truth in the idea that understanding something means you can control it. And it started off with natural philosophy as a sub branch of theology, where by seeking to understand God's creation, you moved closer to God.
Mm.
And then it came to, as the boundaries were pushed on that beyond the horizon of your everyday man, then it's like, oh, we
Oh,
understand all this. We can control all
right.
this. Where's God? And like we talk about the concept of God, and I keep trying to relate it to a polytheist perspective because we've spent so much time in a polytheist perspective historically. So there has to be an analogy there. And like I think it's just the world, the existence, the rules of existence, where in polytheist conceptions, the gods are within the structure of the world and have to follow certain rules and negotiate their place in it too. Where in the monotheist
Yeah,
perspective, the word God is used instead to refer to the ultimate structure.
it's outside of the creation. And in monotheism, God is the thing that makes the rules, not the rules themselves or
Mm,
something that has to abide by them.
mm,
It's the spirit that shapes the rules themselves.
mm,
And that effectively the oldest injunction in religious belief is don't usurp me.
mm,
Is God saying, like, I am the greatest thing. Don't put anything above me. And in the modern world, of course, we go, oh, that's just the way that religions maintain dominance and power.
mm,
Um, but, we're religious creatures. Whatever we put in the place of God becomes a God.
mm. And at the moment, that's science and engineering and the ability to do mechanical things and
I don't
so
actually
on.
think. I think it's authority because God was the ultimate authority,
But the authority comes
and
from the
we,
ability to act. And previously,
yeah,
God had the ultimate authority. He would bring a storm, he would make something happen or not. And that was not just the way people explained the world, that was the way they saw it. It was extremely literal. It wasn't just, oh, this happened, oh, it must have been God. It's like, oh, this rock fell and killed my child. It's not just that it's an unfortunate thing and God caused it. It's like God is the entire system. And you can't
yeah,
be angry at the world, at existence, in the same way as
yeah.
you can be at an individual entity within that, no matter how great that entity. And there's an interesting point I saw in the book I was reading and just finished on polytheism, um, pointing out that these days in, you could say, alternative spiritual paths, as in non-Judeo-Christian Islam, some things that have come about in the last 100 years, or couple of 100 years, there's a predominance of nature as an object of worship. But that's implying nature is outside of self and that we are not part of nature. And so there's an element of rejoining there. But if you go back to, say, Norse mythology, it's like nature is that overarching structure that we exist within. So there's no point sort of worshipping the world. You interact with it, and it's just like, there's the rules of life, deal with it. Whereas we've divorced ourselves from that and taught ourselves that we can change the rules. Like you look at Star Trek, they've got their magic wand called a phaser, and they've got their rituals called tapping on a keyboard in their starship to make something happen with the modulation of the particle beam and whatever, technobabble. And then the TARDIS takes that to a bit of an extreme of magic man in a box with his magic wand that he waves around and makes a noise and so on. It's like, yeah, that's just magic. Um, like it's the idea that we can be like, God is dead and we killed him because in our cultural perspective we usurped the ability to act and then took the responsibility on ourselves and then made a mess of it.
There is something there.
So I'm just
I
thinking
feel
of the Just Stop
there's a
Oil
distinction about
protesters. And
humility somewhere in there.
well, in terms of humility, that actually links to what I was thinking of, because like you've got the Just Stop Oil protesters, you've got like someone who was emailing Apple every day demanding that the meat emoji be removed because it was triggering them because they were vegan. It's like, no, the world doesn't revolve around you. But hang on a minute, we've got a culture where that is a dominant view, that the world revolves around you.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's all about me.
even if it's not all about you personally, it's all about us. It's like
Yeah,
humanity, are the centerpiece. And
yeah. What are we subservient to? That was the old rule of like, God is whatever the king bows to.
mm,
Peasant and king alike. Now, what do our kings bow to now? Nothing good. Say that.
mm,
My problem is many people think that the answer is to resurrect God. And I don't know if that's possible.
I think it's self-resolving. If you take away people's God structure, or their God structure ceases to do the job, they'll find a new one. And you can take all sorts of metaphysical perspectives on that, but
Well,
we went to science, and
yeah,
now if that fails to do the
I'm
job,
not I'm not worried about the end of the species because I
mm,
know that we're always self-correcting.
mm,
I just want there to be like as minimal death and suffering in the meantime as possible. That's sort of where I'm aiming at.
mm.
If it was a, protect the species, I'd be like, oh, yeah, we'll figure it out. Because trying to steer the ship is kind of insane. But there's some relatively obvious pitfalls that we look like we're going to walk into. And I still want to be part of the game of humanity. But I'm struggling to find my place in that game because I understand the rules. Like a person taking a test, it feels like could cheat, but I don't want to. And because of that, how do I find a place, take a place, or influence things and make things better without not usurping the ultimate authority? In the old days, that would be, usurping God. I want to stand up. I want to help. I want to get involved. And like when we talked about the political issue, when you understand both sides, where do you stand? If I'm going to put my thumb on the scale and I understand the equation, it feels like it'd be better without me. But I also have an instinct that it isn't. And I don't know how to go about that. I could chop myself up to another one of the universe's dice rolls that landed in whatever way that makes me as weird as I am, and that somehow that's useful in whatever grand direction the species is going. But it's hard to do that. And I want to say unconsciously, because that feels like I'm casting aspersions to most people who are doing things in the public space. But there's a distinction there. I don't want to be so arrogant as to think I have all of the answers. I want to see all the sides, and I do. And yet I still want to be involved. And humble. The easy answer is just to check out and let it play itself out because I have faith in it. But I don't think I would have all of this ability to see what's going on just to sit back and do nothing. I know it's an incredibly arrogant analogy, but it makes me think of the ultimate Buddha is the one who comes back to help people. What good is your gifts if you don't give them?
Okay, I'm getting. Oh, I don't. This is the sort of thing that could come off arrogantly or something like that. But
Yeah, no problem.
I get the sense. Well, okay, you talk about looking at both sides and being able to sort of see through the rhetoric, you could say, and you see the equation behind the actions and see the 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 pros and cons of both sides. So you can't pick a side.
I can't just play the game instinctually
Hmm.
like everyone else.
It feels like you're speaking about here are a bunch of potential outcomes. I have no higher guiding value to judge them by.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
this,
I
yeah,
can't hierarchically organize them.
yeah. Because you've
Yeah,
got a bunch of lights, but you know how to
I've got
move all the lights, so you can't navigate by any of them because you know
yeah,
that they're all
and
movable.
if I picked any one of them over the others, it would feel arbitrary.
Hmm.
I don't have a hierarchical system that tells me this is the one to chase after, ignore the rest, or do this one, and then that one in whatever order.
Hmm.
Um, I can look at any one of them and, you know, do something there. But even when I pick one of them, there's always two sides to any great issue in society. And if you can look at both sides and see it as an argument, maybe, the best I can do is negotiate between third parties because I'm good at that. That's something I've always been great at, as being a negotiator. I sort of had a weird dream of trying to form a unified parliament of some kind, or a third party, such as New Zealand First would be a good example. Had the prime minister, but all they did was negotiate between the heads of Labour and National. You must come to peace, and was a fair arbitrator, like couples therapy for the nation.
Oh god.
Um,
I'm just seeing a version of Winston Peters who manages to make a coalition with Labour and National, where
yeah,
he's
if I
the
was going to pick an ultimate goal that was like something I believed would be a high enough value for me to sacrifice my life towards, yeah, that'd be one.
mm,
I'd shoot for that, But it comes back to that problem of, even if I have the weird personality that would make me amazing at being that, it doesn't mean I'd be good at running like the West Otago District Council, or being, some member who has to report, or working in a political organisation delivering flyers. It's not, even if I was great at those things, and I don't know, I have an inclination, but I'm not going to be sitting here and saying I am. It doesn't mean I'm also good at, you know, uh, taking directions from the head of a party, or managing a city, or a neighborhood, or a street, or handing out flyers that are given to me from the political party I'm trying to be affiliated with. These are all different skills. What selects people to getting into those positions isn't being good at those positions. The politicians who are at the top of political parties are there because they were loyal to the party, not because they're good leaders at all. Probably anti-selection as far as the game goes. And then obviously America has the outside, where someone can just run with a bunch of money and start making a difference, which is good but rare. We have had one in a very long time. Maybe you could say Reagan as well, or Kennedy, but there's plenty of arguments for those as well.
I'm still feeling like, in terms of picking a way of ordering potential options or choices of action, what you're talking about there is more, I can take this bunch of lights that I can sort of see through to the people underneath them, moving them around so I can see why they're moving and how they're moving, and I can put them together into one light, and I can say that one's a big enough light for me to dedicate myself to. But it's not a higher light. It's not something to arrange the rest of them by. It's just I can gather those
No,
together.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's two sides of a thing. Okay, here you go. I suppose that kind of is an elevating goal because it stops conflict.
Well, it's certainly elevating,
Um,
but it's
I'm not a big fan of
not.
conflict.
Yeah, it just doesn't see. It's not the same as someone dedicating their life to a certain path in service of God. As
Yeah, see,
difficult.
yeah, because
Yeah.
they have it defined. This is
Mm.
what I should do. Whereas for me, I think I am not arrogant enough to assume that in my present circumstance I should know which to go after.
Mm.
You know, I know I am flawed in a lot of ways, and indecision's a big part of that. I don't think I could pick any of them over any of the others. And I don't even think I know myself well enough to know what my value is. I just know that I have some. I think part of the reason why we're doing this is, even if we are successful, we will be successful because we were us. I wasn't trying to be something I'm not. I was just being me. I'm not trying to be the great interviewer who's really good and asks the good questions, like some of the podcasts I listen to. And, no shade for those guys. They're amazing at what they do, and that's why I listen to their podcast. It's like dating. When you're dating a girl, if you're trying to be something that you're not, it's not going to work. And if it does, then she's going to love something that you're not. You're not trying to get a girl. You're not trying to be successful. You're trying to find a partner for you. You're trying to be successful as you. That's the more important part of the sentence. I'm just going to try and be me here, which means exposing my weird mix of very arrogant and also very self-deprecating and self-doubtful. And if we're successful, we'll be successful. You as well, obviously, but seeing as I'm talking about me, because I was being me and you were being you. I don't want to be, again, I don't want to be arrogant and take undue responsibility. I do my best to not. I actually try really, really hard to be humble all the time. But I also won't stand here and say that I'm not unique and valuable in some way. And it's hard to say that to someone. How do you humbly say to someone that you think you're amazing? Kind of hard.
Yeah.
And where I was going with that is, if we are, and we get, big and people paying attention to us, well, maybe then opportunities will present in such a way that, this distributed amount of minds that listen to this or hear me talk wherever else, or us talk wherever else, would have a better idea of what I or we should do. Because, I am talking about me here. And I feel like I would trust that more than, me sitting in my spare room pontificating on how I could change the world. Someone else may see my value and go, you should do this. And I could find it compelling at the time, and then, away I go. But I don't think I'm arrogant enough to sit here and say that I know what I should do with my life. Or I know what my value is so detailedly that I know how to bring it to other people. I'm sort of hoping other people will help me with that along the way, which is partly why I want to be so completely open and honest and vulnerable on this show or whatever other shows I end up doing. Because this is my whole bit. I'm just me. And you'll see all the flaws. I'm not going to hide them. And hopefully, that'll make it okay for other people to do the same. We can move a bit away from the "you said a bad thing once 7 years ago" problem. And I can potentially find where I can do the most amount of good for the most amount of people in my life, and have it be actually a calling and not self-aggrandizing narcissism from someone who does nothing.
Yeah. I have some good news on the cancel culture that I found recently to segue a
Ah,
little bit.
sure, yeah, give me some good
Um,
news. It'd be
a
a good thing to close out
a
on something positive.
comedian, yeah, since we're doing a short show, an hour sounds like a nice length.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
a comedian, what was it? There were headlines that came out about him making jokes that sounded like he was making fun of domestic abuse. And he's a little bit of a what is it? Edge is the wrong word, but he'll poke fun at disabled people in a laugh with them type of sense.
He's a real comedian.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And similarly poke fun at himself and yeah, yeah. He seems funny from what I've seen of him. But his response to these accusations of making life domestic abuse were to post a message about it on Twitter or whatever it was that he used, saying, "My apology is in the link below." The link led to a ad to buy the helmets that you give people who have severe mental disabilities to not bang their heads. It's like, here you go. You're obviously delicate. Use those.
Yeah.
And he he'd said these things in a paid Netflix special, so he got money for it, and he can look around and see comedians whose careers are booming who laughed off the attempts to cancel them with more difficulty than he is doing because they were doing it at the height of it. But the fact that he's able to laugh it off and then just walk away and
Yeah,
it fizzles quickly.
yeah, you never apologize.
Mm.
I was listening to Peterson's podcast today, and he interviewed these boys, like 16, 17-year-old boys, who hardline refused the school's sort of mandates during the whole COVID situation, masks and all that. And it was the 16-year-old, the younger one, spent like the next 3 years flying all around Canada and the United States organizing protests and walkout from high schools. And it's like educating hundreds of thousands of high school kids and getting them to stand up for their own choices and what they want to do with their life. And that all came from the result of never apologizing.
Mm. That's a
You know,
good one to
he
dive
told
into.
this, yeah, he told this wee story. We'll just close with this. It was great. He was in some protest and he got a big cut on his face. Antifa tried to kill him, basically. And he got arrested for being assaulted, effectively. Cops kept him in the back of the van for like 3 hours while there was an ambulance outside and like wouldn't let the ambulance crew in or whatever. And then eventually the ambulance guys got in and looked at him and were like, shit, we've got to get you to hospital. And the cops were like, cool, you're not going in the ambulance, we'll take you in a cruiser. Another 3 hours later. And then he gets walked into the ER department. He's got these handcuffs on and he's covered in blood because, a face cut doesn't stop bleeding. He's just covered. He's got a lot of blood loss. Police escort on either side. And he gets up to the front desk of the thing and the nurse says, you need to put a mask on. And this was the whole point of why he does all these protests and all that back when it was a big deal. Obviously, it's not now. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. And the cop next to him just bursts out laughing. Just because it's the irony of the whole situation. It's like, that's why he was protesting. That's why the cops cracked down on him. He never said no. And he's there in handcuffs, covered in blood, getting closer to bleeding out than he should. And they're like, you need to do this or we're not treating you. And he's like, it's not happening. And I think the funny thing about that is that the police laughed. That deep down inside, we all admire those who stay true to themselves.
Mm. Even if we think
And
that person's being an effing idiot, we'll
yeah,
admire the truth to the
Yeah,
They're sticking
they're
with it.
being themselves and they're standing up and they're not apologizing for something they believe.
Mm.
You know, an example of a comedian. It's like, no, this is a joke. You know, suck it. I'm not ever going to apologize for making a joke. If you have a problem with a joke, don't come to the show.
Mm.
That kind of thing. When the mob comes for you, don't give them an inch. And very often they seem to just go off somewhere else.
Mm. I need
Yeah.
to go into that with you at some point in the future because I've been mulling it over. It's like, okay, there's never apologize ever for anything. There's apologize always for everything. There's times when an apology in a personal relationship, say, is entirely reasonable and
Mm.
necessary.
Never apologize to the mob.
Mm. Come back with a nuanced response, and then they'll just shout, and you're like, I gave a nuanced, carefully thought
Yeah.
out
Or you
response.
just go, no. Yeah, not happening.
Mm.
I think I'll just say this and then we'll stop because otherwise we'll get into metaphysics. The world seems to be constructed in such a way that when you don't apologize for what you believe, things tend to work out for you. The person
Mm.
that hardlines or when the mob comes to them always tends to be the one who succeeds, who does well, who goes far. Because everyone looks at them. All the people who are not part of the mob looks at them and go, this person's getting attacked. And then they didn't back down. And then all of a sudden people start admiring them. People call them legal opportunities for defense. And then all of a sudden you have someone who's got a whole bunch of doors open to them. Standing up in a small situation in a viral world can get you the attention of people with influence. And even back in the olden days, it was still the same, just to a lesser degree. I think there's a real power in that. No such thing as bad advertising.
Mm.
But it's just heartening that there's something about when you're being attacked unjustly and you don't give in an inch. Once upon a time, we would have said God smiles upon you. But however you want to take it, things go your way. And you can be as secularist as you like, but that seems to happen, which is good. One of the greatest things I think is that in this world, good actually triumphs against evil. The fact that the good things prevail and evil things don't is a miracle.
Yep. Yeah.
And we should all take a bit of comfort in the fact that no, actually, the psychopaths do not just win every time because that's how the world is set up. It's actually the opposite. The
Yeah.
humble, honest, good man who does a good job when no one's looking. He wins, even when no one's looking.
There's still noise
Say
in
whatever
that
you like
signal.
about that. Yes, yes.
Mm.
But, it can be 60% that way.
Mm.
And that's enough.
So
51% that way.
yeah. Yeah.
It's enough. So, that's the way the ship is turning. We can turn it the other way if we choose to, for sure. We definitely have a choice, but
I
no,
wonder
it's
if
thing.
if one of the balancing factors on where that ship turns is that the social, however you want to phrase it, forces turning the ship towards the negative, very nebulously defined deliberately, are self-destructive. And so they are self-correcting, self-neutralizing.
Yeah. And good things by their nature are constructive.
Mm.
And obviously our definition of good and evil is going to be based upon evolutionary lines.
Mm.
So yeah, you can explain it secularly all you like, but it's still great that it's a thing. We should all just be looking at the world with a little bit of positivity in that.
Mm.
That if we just sort of let it run, things will actually turn out better than they are now.
Because
We're not going towards an apocalypse.
yeah, people who stand up, they're not standing up. Well, they may be standing up against things on particular issues, but it's not the people who say this is bad and shout about how bad something is all the time that win. It's the people who stand up and say no, this, and so
Yeah.
that's the thing they're wanting. They're just saying
Yeah.
no.
This is my hill. I
Yeah.
will die on this hill.
Yeah.
You will not take this from me. You will never get me to say this is bad.
Yeah. It's a constructive focus. It's a focus of I want this rather than
Defensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's defensive aggression.
There's a defensive bias in reality, which is
defensive, non-violent aggression.
You can get violent.
Nothing. Yeah, but nothing changes the world like a martyr.
Mm.
You think of someone who goes on hunger strike, for example.
Mm.
They move the needle.
I'm just
the
thinking
person who lashes out does not.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of Kyle Rittenhouse, where he was backed into a corner with people advancing on him with guns, and he shot someone, and in blatant self-defense.
It was defensive. Yeah. Defensive use of violence.
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to hurt anyone. Back off, back off, back off. You're going to kill me if I do nothing, bang.
I'm not letting you get away with this either.
Mm.
There's a case of, if you come at me, I will put you down.
Mm.
But I don't want to, but I will. Every now and then I go and watch that wee clip, because it's still on YouTube. And there's a real sense of, I think everyone should look at it, that something about the world changed that day, I think. Because no one had done it before. We'd had these riots, we'd had these protests, we'd had the boundaries being pushed. And this 16-year-old kid was like, no. He was the one who put the line in the sand. He wasn't going to lay down and let himself be killed. And you can say all you like about how much he provoked it. Fine. Doesn't matter. He wasn't going to die for the lie that everyone was saying was true.
Mm.
The story that everyone was abiding by, not the individual case that everyone was grumpy about.
And even though he was the one who shot a guy, he was still a martyr in a large sense, in the court sense.
Well, they went after him pretty hard.
Mm.
But yeah, he was 100% the innocent in that story.
Mm.
But there is something about, I don't know, there's something about that defensive use of force. He went there to give aid to people all night long. And then, people often focus on the evils that the people who attacked him did, which I think kind of defeats the point. Though it does make it a lot more comfortable to knowing, that one of the guys who died was a convicted pedophile. Like, okay, great. I feel a little less bad about that. But it kind of doesn't matter. People thought that they could use violence and force to get their political opinions across however they liked. And being in a mob-like scenario, they decided, we're in the right, and you, being the wrong race, are in the wrong, so I'm going to kill you. And he said no. And it was filmed, and then the whole world looked at that and went, all right, do we have the right to defend ourselves or not? No, I don't think it was just America.
Mm.
We all, particularly in our generation, I think mine more than yours, but probably yours too, we look at American politics and American culture more than our own countries.
Mm.
Because this is a global culture now. whatever countries are on the same internet, you can exclude those who aren't, are in the same culture. And there is 100% a culture war, like a political struggle almost, but fought out culturally and not politically. And America's the only country where it is fought politically.
Mm.
And I think we all looked to them because they're our leaders, and we all looked at him as the example of, is this how it's going to be? Can these people get away with it, or can they not? And I think it was not the court decision that he was innocent, but his actions in the moment to take those actions that said to the world, no, this isn't okay. And yes, we can defend ourselves.
Mm.
And I don't know how much that's sunk in, but I think it's sunk in a bit. And I think it started a trend and it'll take a long time to manifest, but I think there's something there. It's a little bit more hope.
Yeah. Should we wrap it up there?
We do need to stop. I'm getting very hot and sweaty in the sun here. Very
Yeah.
hot here.
I got a sore throat and I should get an early night, so.
Yep. Get up and get to the hospital in the morning and have a new baby.
Yeah. Good luck with that and good chat.
Yeah. I see, mate.
Yep. Oh. Till next time.
Bye.